If you come out of the bottom of a squat and your hips shoot into one side, you're not alone. And no, usually it's not just weak glutes or your stance is wrong. Most of the time, it's a shift problem. You can shift into one leg, so your body shifts away when you stand up. Today, I will show you how to identify quickly which side you can shift into, what that means for your hips, and the exact drills to fix it so you can push out of the bottom more evenly. A hip shift in a squat is basically just gait frozen in time. What is this guy talking about? What is gait? Gait is how we walk in space. And in walking, we shift weight from side to side. In a squat, you still have to be able to arm both sides of your hips, even though your feet don't move. So if you always shift to the right when standing up, it often means you're stuck in a stance pattern on one side and you don't have access to load the other side properly. We're not just squatting, we're trying to shift and produce force. So what do I mean with shift? Let's keep it super simple. So if you shift to the right when you stand up out of the bottom, it usually means you can't really get onto the left side and stand there, so your body escapes back to the right side to stand up. So we think about two jobs. Job A, this is usually the side where we cannot shift into. That side usually needs more access to hip internal rotation and hip flexion. So you can actually accept load on that side and start to shift into. And then we've got job B, the side we cannot shift out of. And that side usually needs better ability to externally rotate and extend the hip to actually shift out of that side and more into the other side. So that we can actually push off that side, propel away from that side. We can check this with a super simple test. Just perform a body weight squat. 3 to 5 slow and controlled reps. Film yourself from the rear or the front. Then look at your hips. As you move into the bottom of the squat, you should be seeing a tendency towards a certain side. As you push out of the bottom, you will likely see that that person still tends to prefer that side, and there is kind of that shift to the preferred stand side. But now the important question. Which side do you avoid loading? A lot of people see the shift and assume that the side they're shifting towards is the problem side. But usually the side you shift towards is the side you're stuck on. And the other side is the one you're missing. And the worst thing you can do in such situations is to actually force symmetry. So the goal is to load that side that you avoid, to actually learn to stay on that side whilst keeping the foot flat and the pelvis stable. And this is where exercise constraints come in very handy. Because they don't just strengthen you, they literally tell your body where to put the weight. And the first exercise that we are going to choose to tackle this specific issue is a kickstand hinge with contralateral load on our side that we are not able to shift into. Now, this one is an amazing one to learn how to shift into the non-stance leg, so our non-preferred side. A hinge pushes the hips back in space, right? And pushing the hips back in space, very similar to shifting into one side, especially when we're looking at the required movements that need to happen. As I'm referring to hip internal rotation and hip flexion. That's the movements that we can achieve with that kickstand hinge. So we will improve our ability to shift into that side. One of the most important things with this drill here is the foot pressure on our working leg. I'd highly recommend keeping the foot flat in contact with the ground. You don't want to shift the pressure onto the outside of the foot and really keep the knee nicely aligned with your toes. Aligning the knee with your toes will ensure that we're getting actual internal rotation up the chain. If you're shifting all of the weight onto the outer side of the foot, you're just pushing the knee further out to the side, and you are actually avoiding the work that an exercise is intended to get done. Shifting into that side, pausing 2 to 3 seconds at the bottom really helps reinforce that position and keeping the pelvis stable. And then I'd recommend to return very slowly towards the top position, because if you move fast, you will probably not get the benefits of this exercise. Okay, it's all about restoring movement, and restoring movement, there is a saying that I like to use in my coaching, which is move slow to learn fast. And this can't be more true, especially when it comes to prehab and rehab. Now, the next exercise that we're going to use is front foot elevated split squat with band reference. The band is coming from the outside, so we really need to kind of bring the knee inward and resist the band pulling us out to the side. What this will do, it will help reinforce that internal rotation component and hip flexion component that we're looking for on our non-stance leg. So basically what we are doing is we are creating the necessary position in our pelvis to drive the changes that we're looking for, right? By having the side that we are not able to shift to in front of us in that hip flex position, and the other leg in a hip extended position, we're actually training the exact movement strategies that we need to get rid of this issue. We learn how to shift into that working side and put the other side more into this hip extended position. Remember what we've talked about before, we need to shift into the left side in this case, if that's our non-preferred side, and learn how to shift out of our stance leg. So the front foot elevated lunge with band reference is an amazing exercise, and also with this one here. Again, we'll try to implement the same cues as we did previously. Foot pressure on the forefoot or on that front foot is key to get the changes up the chain. In this case here, the band will give us even more reference to drive the position that we need. Now, the last exercise that we're going to choose is for our stand side, where we really learn how to actually push out from that side. After we've learned how to move into our non-preferred side, we now need to learn how to actually push out of our stance leg. On our stance leg, we're going to train hip extension and abduction, right? And for this particular phase, we're going to use an exercise like a dumbbell glute step down. For this exercise, we need a box to elevate our body and a dumbbell in the ipsilateral hand, so in the same side as the working leg. Now, for this exercise, we're going to lean slightly forward or hinge in the starting position, so we feel our glutes and hamstrings ever so slightly. With this slightly forward lean position, we're now going to slowly descend, but we only lower it to a point where we can keep the hips relatively stable and we don't start shifting too much or losing foot pressure as much. Okay, that's a thing that might be happening a lot. The heel rotating inward as you descend more towards the bottom. If that's the case, then just reduce range of motion and actually work within the active range of motion that you can control. And here is how you can plug this into your training plan without turning your whole training session into a rehab workout. So the exercises that we've just talked about can be used as your warm-up. You start with the first exercise on the left side, and the second exercise on your left side if you tend to prefer the right side, and then the third exercise is done on the right side only. So basically you're starting off with the kickstand hinge on the left side, followed by the front foot elevated squat with band reference, also on the left side, and then the dumbbell glute step down on the right side. For the example of a right lateralized athlete, so for someone who tends to prefer his right hand side. And then after performing the warm-up with 1 to 2 sets per exercise with about 6 to 10 repetitions with a very slow tempo, we start moving into our main exercise of the day. I suppose it's gonna be a lower body day, a squat day. And then when we're doing our ramp ups to our working set, I'd highly recommend to slow down the first couple of ramp up sets. So don't move fast through the working sets, and yeah, ensure you have a controlled negative, short pause at the bottom, and controlled positive again. What this will do, it will just help reinforce the movements that you try to unlock beforehand and give you the carryover that we're looking for. Because if we start to move too fast, then this carryover from those exercises from previous that you did previously won't carry over as much, because the faster we move, the more the body is going to orientate. That means the less relative motion you have within the structures. So what does that mean? The faster you move, the more likely your hip joint and femur are moving as a unit instead of giving you that individual movement that we're looking for, the so-called relative motion. And here are the 3 biggest mistakes I see when people try to fix this issue. Stop forcing symmetry. Because if you try to force symmetry, your body will just create new compensations. And then you add a second layer of compensation and it will just get harder to get rid of it. And the second biggest mistake I see is inappropriate foot pressure. If your foot pressure is off, for example, if you tend to shift all of your weight onto the outside, the ball of the big toe is lifting off the ground, or you're shifting too much onto the forefoot or too much onto the heels in a squat, then this obviously results in you not being able to absorb and produce force on either side. And the third biggest issue that I see is that people just tend to strengthening instead of actually teaching how to shift into and out of the other side. And if you're doing that, you're just reinforcing more compensatory strategies, right? So you're actually making your asymmetry worse rather than getting rid of it. Let me know in the comments down below if you're dealing with asymmetry in squats and what you've tried so far to get rid of it. And let me know if these exercises helped you get rid of your problem. And if you haven't done yet, please help me grow this channel by liking this video, subscribing to my channel, and turning on the notifications so you don't miss out on any new video. And if you need help with your own training, whether that is guidance, with programming, getting stronger with your street lifting lifts, learning a muscle up, or just getting jacked and pain-free, then reach out for my one-on-one online coaching. The description is in the link down below. Also my other links, my socials, the Streetlifting Academy. Yeah, you'll find everything down below. If you need anything, reach out. That's a wrap for today. See you.